it aligns very well with the great legal marketing community and Scalawble. So it's a fun group to work with as well because we're aligned from a value sense, and also from our goals and missions are aligned as well.
It's so important that we believe that you be able to work with team members where there's value alignment with clients, vendors, sponsors that are value aligned to you. And, the clearer you make that for yourself, your values, the clearer that you communicate that out to the world, the marketplace, the more the world is going to bring you the people that are aligned. And you just,
Well, and what's interesting, Ben, is that key.
Welcome to the Renegade Lawyer Podcast, the show where we ask the questions, why aren't more lawyers living flourishing lives and inspiring others? And can you really get wealthy while doing only the work you love with people you like? Many lawyers are. Get ready to hear from your host, Ben Glass, the founder of the law firm Ben Glass Law in Fairfax, Virginia, and Great Legal Marketing, an organization that helps good people succeed by coaching, inspiring, and supporting law firm owners. Join us for today's conversation.
Hey everyone, this is Ben Glass. Welcome back to another episode of the Renegade Lawyer Podcast, where I get to interview folks inside and outside the legal profession who are making a ding in the world. And today I've got one of my longtime friends, Chad Kerby, and his partner in crime here, Gary Musler of Scalawble, on the podcast. And these guys are really smart. So first, like breaking news, Chad is going to be the head MC at the Great Legal Marketing Summit this fall in Orlando. So Chad, we're very excited, and thank you for saying yes to that, because you're one of the best speakers from the platform I've ever seen in my life. So we are happy and proud to have you on that team, sir.
Well, Ben, it's exciting for us too. One of the greatest events any legal professional can attend, if not the greatest event, is that Great Legal Marketing Summit. It's phenomenal. Loved it, have participated in it many times. And so I'm just thrilled to be there.
Well, thank you. We've been at that business for 18 years. I'm coming on 40 years of practicing law in this October, actually. We should maybe just have a cake at the event. But way back at the beginning, right from before Great Legal Marketing was born, I found and discovered Infusionsoft. And then shortly after that, Chad was at Infusionsoft, now Keep, back then. And shortly after that, Chad was at our events, speaking and hooking lawyers up with the product, and everybody loved him. And so Chad's one of these speakers, as you know, like he actually does his research and comes prepared, knowing who the crowd is, knowing what the host sponsor is trying to get accomplished there. And so that's how our friendship started. Since then, as we were saying before we went live, I actually visited Chad at his house, visited Infusionsoft, and actually got snowed in once in Arizona, which people would think is impossible. But what happened was that we had a mastermind event. We came out to Infusionsoft and worked with Chad and some of the other then leaders of that company. And meanwhile, a big bad blizzard took place on the East Coast and we couldn't get back home. So I was going to clothes stores, like buying more stuff, Chad, buying more shorts and t-shirts, while my poor family was digging out from a blizzard. I'm like, guys, I'm sorry, I can't make it back. I'm here in sunny Arizona.
Yeah, that's crazy. But to go back to Ben, when we first started meeting together, when I remember attending my first Great Legal Marketing Summit, and I was sitting there, and I'm not an attorney, but I'm sitting here going, oh my goodness, this is one of the greatest events I've ever been to. And I'm taking copious notes. I'm completely engaged and immersed in the experience. And I felt like I left the event, at least I hope, a better person. And so, one of the things that's so exciting for me to be a part of the Great Legal Marketing Summit and community is, yes, you learn what it takes to be a phenomenal attorney. Yes, you learn how to be able to claim your life back and also be able to manage those priorities in life, but also you just leave as a greater person. And so I just love being at the event, participating, and really looking forward to spending more time with you and your team.
It'll be fun. I think we've assembled, if Ben Glass has done anything in the world, is to have assembled a good tribe of entrepreneurial lawyers who are really trying to make things better for their own lives and for their families' lives first, knowing that if those two things are right and their teams, like really building great teams, if those things are all right, then the client will be well served. Although it's called Great Legal Marketing and began as a company to teach personal injury lawyers how to advertise better, really we've morphed into something that is all about building a great business where people will thrive, where the owners, the teams will thrive. And if that's true, then the clients will thrive and the communities will be made better. Gary, give us a little bit of your backstory, because I know you and Chad are working together with your company now called Scalawble, and you're doing some work with lawyer.com. But I'm curious about your own background. Where do you come from and how did you and Chad get together?
Sure. It's funny. I never planned on being where I am, but I am enjoying it. Yeah. So I really just started marketing on the internet back in the late 90s when we first had the opportunity to do so. And I had achieved some acclaim, one of the largest lead providers for the online universities. One day I got a call from an attorney. And so needless to say, my heart started racing and, my palms started sweating because, what did I do now? But the good thing was I wasn't in any trouble. And it was an attorney who had heard about my lead generation prowess and wanted to know if we could do the same thing for her. I was kind of full of myself at the time. I said, sure, I'm a number one lead provider online and happy to help. But what happened was it turned out to be an epic failure. And just like a lot of failures too, it was a great learning experience because what I learned was that marketing for attorneys is really different than marketing for really anybody else because, at the end of the day, who wants to hire an attorney? It's usually a bad day when you need to hire an attorney. So I started down that path and just really enjoyed the space that I was working in. And I had the opportunity to attend a legal marketing event and Chad was there and Chad blew me away too. And we connected after that. And I said, hey, Chad, I'd like to work with you if you could help train me to be as effective as you are at communicating. And that's really how it began is I had hired Chad to help me. And the next thing you know, our passion to help the legal industry brought us to the point where we felt that we could make a difference in a lot of attorneys' lives.
Well, you picked a good mentor and you've identified exactly the problem, which is that hiring a lawyer is usually an event-driven and oftentimes an adverse event-driven event, really. And so I often give the analogy that you're driving to work and on the radio is playing the commercial for we'll get your squirrel out of your attic. But if you don't have a squirrel in your attic, your brain doesn't even listen to that commercial. And so much time, energy, and money is spent by lawyers in broadcasting commercials to people whose brains know they don't need a lawyer today. And so how do we engineer our marketing? How do we engineer our brand so that we can get into other people's lives in ways other than, and for reasons other than, hey, I'm a great personal injury attorney, or I'm a great, criminal defense attorney, right? And Chad was really instrumental in that because when I met Chad, he had so much broad experience with small biz owners, right? Of all different kinds of businesses all over the country and in certain respects all over the world, all kind of trying to solve this problem, which is how do we get somebody to pay attention to us before they actually need our product or our service? And how do we keep them interested if they do buy our product or our service? How do we keep them interested forever, even when the emergent need has expired, so that we can be someone that this new customer or client or patient will refer? So, and Chad really set himself apart as he had learned this. So not only did he have the knowledge inside, but he had the ability to teach this from the stage so that all types of business, but particularly lawyers who are, jaded, often cynical, many times, not our groups, but many. We're teaching lawyers, like, how do I see what other businesses are doing and incorporate that into law? And so Chad was instrumental in our own growth in terms of being able now to bring these teachings to lawyers.
Well, And the reality is, and you both are far more kind than you need to be, but the reality is that the attorneys that you attract to the great legal marketing community. And that's one of the things that people that go, and everyone that's hearing this has to go. You'll be just stunned as you sit down and sit to the person on your left, the person at your right, and how alike you are, because you're associating with really like-minded individuals who are committed to growing and scaling their firm so that they can enjoy life in the process. I mean, one of the things about Ben, you love life. Like if someone were to ask me, summarize Ben, I'm like, Ben is passionate about life. I mean, he loves refereeing soccer. He loves serving in the community. He loves his wife. He loves his kids. He's just passionate about life in general. And so helping attorneys enjoy life to where they're not just caught up. And that's kind of where Gary and I, our paths crossed, because Gary was one of the greatest lead generators in the world. And yet there were firms that weren't succeeding with his leads. And so we're like, okay, Gary, we got to take a look at this. What's happening in the client journey that so much is being lost along the way? And that's really the foundation of Scalawble. The company that Gary and I founded was that we help companies create that client journey. We help firms create that client journey and give them the systems and software to support it to where they are capitalizing on every lead. They're capitalizing on every client and making sure that it's happening so that they can still enjoy life along the way.
This is so important because, Chad, when you and I first met and started working together, like there weren't as many lead sources. I mean, the internet was in its kind of infancy. There wasn't even paid advertising on the internet. It was a lot of organic search. And even back then, we were teaching how to build better yellow page ads and stuff like that. And so and my statement was going to be, and the whole world has changed so much. But even, Chad, as you know, in the last 180 days, with the advent of so much AI technology and AI opportunity and, chances to shoot yourself in the foot, frankly, with AI, it has really made things, I think, even harder for lawyers to figure out, what do I do next? Because there is always this urge to chase the shining object, where what you have identified exactly, Gary and Chad, is that y'all can build the perfect lead gen thing, ad, technology, landing page, make the phone ring, whatever, and it can still fail miserably if there's not a team in place that knows the mission of the firm, the purpose of the firm, who we serve, who we don't serve, who's specifically trained to remake the sale, because we forget how scary it is for someone to actually pick up the phone and give us a call, who can then help that prospective law client feel like they made a really great decision to call. And yes, this is the place, if that's the answer, if appropriate, if it is the right type of case for a firm. Yes, Gary, you're in the right place. It's so good that you called today, because Chad, Mr. Kerby, is an awesome lawyer. And that's where you guys, I think, with Scalawble really, really come in. And it's the thing I have found over the years that lawyers, if you want to try to solve every problem with another ad, right, or a bigger ad spend, and yet often they're really hurting themselves because, they're putting people down a funnel and the people aren't getting a good experience. And not only do they not hire the lawyer, but they tell 10 people why they didn't hire the lawyer.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and Gary, I'll defer to you here in just a minute. But then when Gary gave me one of his books years ago, and I knew he was in the lead generating business, and so lead generation, and I read the book and I was like, Gary, I don't understand. And he's like, what do you mean? And I was like, I thought you were in lead generation. And he's like, I am. I said, yeah, but the book's not on lead generation. It's on the whole client journey. And he goes, yeah, but you got to understand, Chad, in order for my lead generation to work, they have to figure that out. And Gary figured it out. Go ahead, Gary.
It's like, what did you see that you then solved for? What were the problems? And then how did you start to solve for the problems of what comes after the lead is generated?
Well, the first thing that struck me is exactly what you just said, Ben, and that was everybody's first reaction seemed to always be to throw money at the problem rather than understanding that business is a relationship, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it's people doing business with people. So we have to have a message that's resonating with our ideal consumer. And so often attorneys are finding themselves working with clients that maybe are not their ideal
You
client.
can say it. Yeah.
And,
You
at
won't
the
love
end of
it.
the day, it's your own fault, right? Because it's the messaging that you're putting out there and it's where you're fishing. So part of the whole idea behind Scalawble was really just to get everything synchronized in a way where it wasn't about how much you spend, but rather how well you spend what you spend and that experience that you're crafting for that end user. So really understanding who it is that you want to talk to and then providing extreme value to them and being consistent all the way through so that your prospect knows that they're dealing with, Ben Glass or whoever it is that they have a relationship. And that's more important than you can possibly imagine because consumers do have a lot of choices these days.
Oh, they have hundreds. They have hundreds of choices, especially in big metropolitan areas. And now I'm not only competing against the guys and gals who are running law firms locally, but if you do searches like for, best personal injury lawyer in Northern Virginia, you're going to see ads for some nationally branded law firms who I know have never set foot here. So I'm competing against them too. Now, you said one thing that, about letting clients in the door who aren't great for the firm. That is so destructive because not only is it now wasted ad spend and frustrate you, but worse, it frustrates your team. And and I believe that the whole object really is of running a law firm, frankly, like the secret sauce is build a great team of A players, right? And unleash them, just get out of their way and unleash your great players. But if you keep giving these A players really bad experienced clients, the A players want to go, right? And they'll take the A players with them. And so that's the destructive nature of bad clients goes well beyond, well, it's just a bad advertising spend. It can really go to the very core of your business.
That
Yeah,
absolutely.
100%.
Yeah, it's what's interesting is you also bring up that AI element that's becoming it's just top of mind for everybody right now. I've immersed myself in AI. I know it so well. And I would dare say that I don't know anyone in the legal space that understands AI better than Gary Musler. Gary knows it better than anyone. But as Gary and I have talked about this, AI is a lot like fertilizer, Ben, in the sense that it can help your firm grow, but it depends on what you have planted there to begin with. And so if you don't have the right systems, processes, and people in place, putting a bunch of fertilizer on it isn't going to help either.
It's going to help, and it may help. It may help grow in ways that you don't want it to grow. So it's a mess. So yeah. So the company is Scalawble, and we were joking before we went live. It's like it's SCALAW, Scalawble. So how do we pronounce it? And I think you may need a branding expert to help you. But look, when a law firm engages Scalawble and says, we want to get better, we want to live a better life, we recognize that our processes aren't great. Like we're smart enough to know that. Talk to us a little bit about like your methodology for just analyzing the real root of the problem for a particular law firm, because I think that lawyers could start asking themselves, all right, let me hear what Gary and Chad have to say. And gee, that could be me too.
Right. And so what we do is we take them through an assessment that identifies what they're currently doing in their client journey. And then we can recognize gaps and holes to where if they put the right systems and processes in place, it can end up generating them tremendous amounts of revenue, because it's one of those things. And you and I have a close friend, Ben, that I won't mention his name for obvious reasons here in a moment, but he teaches organizations and entrepreneurs how to really grow from 1 to 1,000, right? So he teaches them this. He and I were on the phone the other day, and he really struggles seeing it in his own company. And he actually has written a book, and I wanted to tell him, you just got to read your book and apply your book. And what I mean by that is a lot of attorneys might even have an idea of what they need to do to scale. But when you're immersed in the middle of it, it makes it very difficult to see where those holes are and where those gaps are. And so what Gary and I do, we come in and we just take them through an assessment, and then they all of a sudden see things. And then for back of the letter example, it goes from black and white to color. And they're like, oh, okay, I see now. Then we help them put the right systems and processes in place. So then all of a sudden their business begins to scale, their firm begins to scale, and they see results that they never thought were possible before.
I'm curious, as you get involved with the law firm, with what frequency is one of the issues that needs to be solved is wrong people on the bus?
It's, it's funny.
Pregnant pause there, right?
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Gary.
So, I was just going to say, that's really at the end of the day, so important, because one of the things, as Chad was saying, when we're doing the deep dive to understand what's going on with their marketing, their operations, so that we can ultimately create a roadmap, is finding out what people's strengths and weaknesses are in the organization, what they like to do, what they don't like to do, because more times than not, having that A player in that right spot is that problem. And you touched on that earlier. That's the crux of it, right? I mean, you can put almost any system in place, but if we don't have the right people driving, then it doesn't go anywhere.
Say something though, Ben, that might be difficult for some attorneys and law firm owners to know or hear, is that sometimes someone gets hired and then gets fired, and they were an A player, but the firm did not have the systems and processes in place that made them successful. And so what happens is an attorney, and Gary and I, one of the main glaring weaknesses we see is in the intake experience. And it's hard because most attorneys will say they're really, really good at intake. And so one of the first things Gary will say is, do you record your calls? Let's
listen.
Let's have a listen. But what happens, Ben, is they'll hire somebody for intake example, and they'll say, okay, here you go. You're in charge of intake. What do you want me to say? Just answer their questions. We're the best in the business. Okay, well, what if they and they give them very loose guidelines. Yeah. And then all of a sudden they put the person in the seat and the conversion rate drops and leads seem to be bad. And all of a sudden this person's like, oh, I can't believe it. I hired a C player or I hired a B player. I'm going to fire them. That very same individual then can go get hired at another law firm who has a roadmap for them, what they need to say in intake. And all of a sudden this person is thriving. And these very two attorneys could be meeting at a networking event saying, hey man, your business is really growing. Well, I hired this intake person who's just unbelievable. Really? What's their name? And they share their name and they go, I fired them 3 months ago, and it was not because that person was poor, but rather the system and guidelines were not there to make them successful.
So there's a bunch to unpack there. And the first is for lawyers to take, when something isn't perfect in the firm, you got to look at yourself first. Like, have I hired the right person? Do I have the systems? Have I done all of this hard work, which they don't teach you in law school? The profession doesn't teach you, which is why, lawyers need organizations like Scalawble and Great Legal Marketing really to bring to bear the knowledge and the skills that are necessary to actually run a business, which is something the profession just ignores. And we have this whole, you're getting me on my rant, right? But we have this whole happiness, unhappiness issue in law. And the profession's answer to the unhappiness is, let's teach people how to pet kitty cats, do yoga, and eat better, which is all well and good. And my answer, what if we actually built a business where everyone made money, people love coming to work, and all the clients were really happy? Like, do you think that might have some effect on the profession?
Right. And then
Personally, right. They hate me. The bar leaders, like, they don't invite me to speak anymore.
well, it's interesting.
Here's this.
Ben, I'll speak at events, and Gary and I are speaking at events across the country all the time in work. I'll say to the group of attorneys, I'll say, how many of you loved sales and marketing so much that you went to law school? And they're just like, wait, well, I don't like it. And then why are you spending all your time doing it? And Scalawble, one of the things, just one piece of the equation is we'll take the attorney and we'll show how they can have someone else do their intake in the same way they would. And we have software that helps do that so that the person's like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. So then they're only spending time doing what they love doing and practicing law. I'm like, you love collections so much, you decided you wanted to become an attorney. No, I don't do that. And it's unique to the legal space. No brain surgeon is calling you and you pick up the phone and you go, oh, hey, Dr. Smith. Yeah. And he's like, yeah, I was just calling about your bill.
Exactly right. Yeah. All of that is true. And I blame, like, the law schools aren't set up to do this. And the profession is run by, honestly goodness, like old people who think that, mainly old people in large firms who don't have the challenge of running a small business and never have, like politicians. Like, they've never run a business, never tried to produce $1, and now they're going to tell us how to live our lives. That's what goes on, but that's a rant. I have an example, though, and Chad, you and I have talked about this before. So we have a happiness director at Ben Glass Law. And everybody,
crazy, Gary? They have a director of happiness.
That's cool.
And now she's been elevated as a director of happiness, and she's in charge of all of the substantial relationships, all the main relationships we have. But she wasn't always in that seat. And she had an administrative seat that, frankly, she didn't love. She wasn't great at. She was having to come in on weekends on her own. Like, we tried to prevent it, but she would come in to try to catch up. And that just wasn't working. And then a space opened up. We had a receptionist before. We didn't really have a happiness director. We said, wow, what if Susie, we could get her out of this other administrative position and just put her in charge of one thing, which she tells her friends, which is, I'm in charge of making sure everybody that interacts with the law firm and all the lawyers here are really happy. And it's amazing.
Can you imagine just the word of mouth exposure Ben is getting on that, Gary, with a director of happiness, that this attorney is so committed to the happiness of his clients and the people that work with him that he's hired a director of happiness.
Brilliant.
I mean, you're separating yourself from everybody.
Well, and it goes beyond, because every FedEx guy and gal, Amazon guy and gal, every vendor who visits any place in the building that we're in knows that they can just walk in, say hi to Susie, make their way back to the kitchen. We have more and better snacks, drinks, energy drinks, coffee, whatever is needed. And every person who walks into the building knows this. And Susie, in large part, this is because of Susie. And honest to goodness, like, people will sit in our lobby inside our office and go, what is this place really? Because we're running around in jeans and t-shirts mostly, right? What is this place really? It doesn't feel like a law firm. Well, you're right. We're the unlawyers, right? We're building something completely different. We're playing a different game. But it's in large part because, guys like you, Chad, showed us that, the path to success in business is to look around at what other successful businesses are doing outside of your own industry and just borrow, steal, take ideas and incorporate them into legal, which I think we've done very well. And now we incorporate in what great legal marketing is doing.
Well, and Ben, it goes back to last week. I was at a fireworks show and we were driving to the fireworks show to park. And everyone was parking like a mile away and getting out their stuff and just walking and walking. And I kept driving. And my kids are like, Dad, what are you doing? Everyone's parking. Let's stop. And it's like, no, rule number 1, don't park where everyone else is parking. And so I just drove all the way up to the very front. And there were like several open spots. And I parked right up front, walked 20 feet, and there we went. But too many of us are parking where other people are parking, thinking that's the right thing. And that's what's so great in what you do at the summit is that you help people understand, listen, you don't have to park where other people park. You can create a firm, a lifestyle, and a life that you want and enjoy. And that's what's exciting about it.
100%.
Hey guys, this is Ben. If you like what you've been hearing on this podcast, not just the marketing and practice building strategies, but the philosophy of the art of living your best life parts, you should know that my son Brian and I have built a tribe of like-minded lawyers who are living lives of their own design and creating tremendous value for the world within the structure of a law practice. We invite you to join us at the only membership organization for entrepreneurial lawyers that is run by 2 full-time practicing attorneys. Check us out at greatlegalmarketing.com.
So talk to us a little bit about who's your avatar for Scalawble, and then talk to us a little bit about lawyer.com and your relationship there and how these different businesses have synergies. And, because I know that you all are always looking for the win-win with
Absolutely.
Like I saw something interesting on, I think it was on LinkedIn a week ago. Like the leaders are all collaborating and the people at the bottom are all competing. And I think that's really, really true with what I've seen you all do over the years. So who's your perfect avatar?
Our perfect avatar is an attorney that's committed to growth. And let me give you an example of this. I was speaking with Michael Gerber at an event a little while ago, and Michael stood up before me, and Michael Gerber, he wrote the book, The E-Myth, and he goes, how many of you want to grow this year? And all the entrepreneurs in the audience raised their hand. And then he stopped and he goes, how many of you are determined to grow this year? And Ben, not all the hands went up. And it was crazy. It was like, wait a second, you all want to grow, but yet not everyone is determined to grow, right? And what separates you, Ben, and I use this as an example to describe our avatar, is someone who's determined to grow. Someone who's saying, okay, Chad, 6 months from now, I don't want to be where I am right now. And when Gary and I speak at conferences, we'll ask the group there, we'll say, how many of you have ever said to yourself, 6 months from now, I'm not going to be where I am right now. My firm is not going to be where I am right now. Then 6 months goes by and then you go, oh no, I meant 6 months from now, and we keep pushing it down the road. And so for us, our avatar is someone who's committed to grow. 1, 2, someone who thinks differently. And that's why the group that we work with, Ben, is in such alignment with the group that you work with, because you have to be willing to think differently. You have to go, and I know, Ben, you live by this mantra when Wayne Gretzky said, I don't skate to where the puck is, I skate to where the puck's going to be. And that's the way, Ben, that's the way you've been for so many years. You were going, okay, where's the puck going to be? Where's the legal industry headed? And you get ahead of it. And that's why at Summit, people go there so they can listen to where, okay, where's the puck going to be? And Ben talks about, okay, this is where you need to be personally. This is where your headspace needs to be. And that's one of the things that I just love about what you and Brian are committed to doing, is helping attorneys get in the right headspace to create that growth. And that's, one of the biggest challenges attorneys face is themselves. And so that's why it's so important that they listen to you and teach them how they can get themselves in the right headspace. But to answer your question, they have to be committed to growth. They have to have that mindset of, okay, I'm going to innovate. I'm not going to be where I am right now. And if they are in that space, and that's someone that Gary and I want to work with, because we're like, we can show you what you need to do to scale, and we can give you the systems and processes to make that happen.
It's interesting because part of what I consider my space is even giving lawyers permission to ask that question, Chad.
Right?
Because it's just so weird that so many lawyers have never felt that they honestly, literally have permission of society, permission of the elites, permission of those who have gone before them to actually ask that question of, yeah, darn it, I would like to grow. And growth isn't necessarily always just in number of people, number of dollars, whatever. Growth can be, our friend Dan Sullivan talks about growing, time freedom and people freedom and having all of these choices. I mean, there's just so many things that, it's sad. I get to represent from time to time lawyers who are maybe 6 and 7 years in, and they're working in what we would call big law. So there's big corporate law firms where they get paid a lot, but it's really because they're working 2 jobs. And I talk to them, I go, so some of them, like, they may be making shortly after law school, $200K a year. That's a lot of money. I go, there's easier ways to make $200K as a lawyer. And they go, no, there isn't. I go, well, actually there is. So why do you say there isn't? Well, no one's ever shown me that. Like, all of law school is built to build minnows to go work in big law. I mean, that's like the reason law schools exist is just to build worker bees for big law, I think, right? And so the sad part about the profession is so many lawyers who get burned out after 6, 7 years and leave the profession entirely. Good people who leave the profession entirely, it's because they've never seen this alley. They don't even know that the language that the 3 of us are speaking on this call actually exists. No one's ever said, oh yeah, look at all these guys and gals that are really like having fun with this deal. So Chad, I know that you and I guess Gary, you're coming in October to the summit.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, absolutely.
And if folks are listening to this, you want to find out more, you can go to glmsummit.com. But can you give us a preview, Chad, sort of beyond this podcast of what some of the things, because I think you'll be one of our breakouts for sure. You'll be emceeing the event, but folks should come prepared to talk to you and Gary about what?
Gary, I'll go ahead and let you answer that.
Well, hey, listen, one of the reasons why we wanted to be a part of the event is not only because of, all the feedback that we've heard from the people that have been there, but, we want to make a difference too and provide that type of transformational experience so that people are actually taking the things that they're learning while attending the event and implementing those things to change the way their practice is operating, to elevate the client experience, which in turn dovetails nicely into keeping those A players happy, as Chad was talking to, and really helping to turn practice into a referral machine so that it's not only serving the people that work at the firm, but also those that it saves. So what, we'd like to be able to do is really help the attorneys attending there to see that by adjusting the way that they communicate, by developing the journey that attracts their ideal client, that they're really creating a win-win situation, not only for themselves and their client, but also their clients as well.
You move the world. When you run a small business that employs great people who like coming to work, who could be so good they could go out to compete with you, but they don't want to, and you then learn the marketing and lead gen to attract the right client, like you actually do help not only that client, but we believe that you help your community as well in so many different ways. Again, running a small business that happens to be in legal, like we help individuals, but every time we help an individual, you're actually making the community stronger. And you're hero to your family too. When you're not working the 2 jobs that Big Law wants you to work for their $200K a year.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about lawyer.com.
Yeah. So lawyer.com, the people over there are just phenomenal and really committed to helping law firms grow as well. And so the synergy between them and us is very similar to you too, Ben. The leadership over there is really committed to growing law firms. And it's an exciting relationship that Gary and I have with them to help them fulfill their mission as well, to helping law firms succeed. And they think differently as well. Lawyer.com is wired differently. They think differently, and it aligns very well with the great legal marketing community and Scalawble. So it's a fun group to work with as well, because we're aligned from a value sense, and also from our goals and missions are aligned as well.
It's so important that you be able to, we believe that you be able to work with team members where there's value alignment, with clients, vendors, sponsors that are value aligned to you. And, the clearer you make that for yourself, your values, the clearer that you communicate that out to the world, the marketplace, the more the world is going to bring you, the people that are aligned. And you just,
Well, and you know what's interesting, Ben, is that key. Gary won't share this, but I will. Gary had the opportunity to work with someone that I won't mention their name because you would recognize it. And he's fairly well known in the legal space. And he was ready to do a joint venture with Gary, which would mean potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then this individual treated one of the members of Gary's team in a certain way that Gary just goes, yeah, I can't do it. So I was like, Gary, so you going to work with them? He's like, yeah, no. I was like, that's hundreds of thousands of dollars. He goes, yeah, but this, and he shared a little bit of what happened. And he's like, that's not worth it to me. And he's like, what matters to me is aligning with people in every sense, that you have a similar mission, similar purpose, and certain similar values. So,
and of course, that means you have to funnel that out for yourself, I believe, personally, right? And that it doesn't just come on a weekend retreat with yourself. That's given, our friend Dan Kennedy talks about having a really well-defined view of life and a philosophy of life that you have crafted as to what impact you want to have and who you want to joint venture with and join with to go to have that type of impact. Let me ask you real quick before I let you talk about Scalawble and where people should go. What do you guys do when you're not doing this stuff? Like you mentioned, like I referee, and Chad, you and I, we have like a bazillion children. My cohort is a little bit older than yours are because you still have more at home than I have at home. But Chad, Gary, I don't know. Like, what do you do when you're not hanging with us?
Gosh, now I'm going to sound a little narcissistic because while you guys are taking care of your families and all that, I don't have a family. So most of my time is spent burning off excess energy. So I spend, a lot of my free time hiking, biking, swimming, gymnastics, I'm pretty athletic. And that's how I keep myself out of trouble, is just to enjoy exercising and a little bit of a sports fan too.
What's your exercise drug of choice then? Like you mentioned gymnastics, which is like, that doesn't get mentioned a lot with guys our age.
No, I know, right? Well, so I'll make this real quick. After being athletic my whole life, I did break down a few years ago and I had trouble walking, let alone doing anything else. And so I just was determined to do something about it. And the best way to address that was to get involved in mobility and all that type of thing. And it's just a path I ended up going down, and very glad I did because I enjoy good health.
We'll have to take Chad into the gym.
Well, Chad has been working out quite regularly too. He's gotten himself in shape. So I think you'll be surprised when you see him next.
Chad, what else are you doing? I knew you were doing some teaching at one point, and of course, you're a leader in your church and in your community.
Yeah, and I'm telling you, just spending time with the kids, and don't let Gary kid you. He's such an incredible contributor to the community. His significant other, Karen, comes out to Orlando. You'll just love her to death. And so and just spending time, when I say not working, Ben, and you referenced this before, when I get to be with people like Ben Glass and Gary Musler, to me, that's not work. That's pure enjoyment. And so, Ben, you and I have talked about when we retire, it's like, what do you mean retire from what? This is what we love to do.
Yeah.
And so that's what part of Scalawble. And to your point, Ben, anyone can go and schedule time with me or Gary at Scalawble.com, and you'll put it in the notes in the podcast, or you can reach out directly to me, Chad at Scalawble.com. But what we love doing is helping law firms scale so that people can enjoy their life. Like Ben, so like you enjoy life. Someone says, hey, Ben, do you want to retire? And you're like, retire from what? I want to keep doing what I'm doing forever, And that's what we want every law firm that Gary and I work with to be able to say and want to do.
I say I retire from people I don't like and things I don't want to do every day. But Sydney and I are like, we're having a good part of this stage of life right now. And I know, and I see you and Cassie, on the great internet. So I keep up with it with your family. Well, look, guys, so it's Scalawble. It's Scalawble.com. You can go there. You can you can schedule a call with Chad. Chad and Gary will be at the Great Legal Marketing Summit. So if you're not signed up yet, glmsummit.com. It's in October. It's in beautiful Orlando. And we have the world's greatest MC in addition to his breakout sessions.
Well, and let me just, and I know we're up against clock here, but let me just say this, Ben, to everyone that's listening right now, to ask yourself that question that Michael Gerber asked that group. Do you want to grow this year, or are you determined to grow? And if you're determined to grow, then sign up for Summit. It'll change your life. So it absolutely will.
All right, guys. Thanks for coming on the call.
Great to see you, Ben.
If you like what you just heard on the Renegade Lawyer Podcast, you may be a perfect fit for the great legal marketing community. Law firm owners across the country are becoming heroes to their families and icons in their communities. They've gone renegade by rejecting the status quo of the legal profession so they can deliver high-quality legal services coupled with top-notch customer service to clients who pay, stay, and refer. Learn more at greatlegalmarketing.com. That's greatlegalmarketing.com.